Hey everybody, welcome back to another Street Epistemology review show. I've got some great people here today. I've got John, Janosch, Michael, Nathan, and Will. And I'm Reid from Cordial Curiosity. How's it going, everybody? What's up?
What's up?
It's great.
How you doing?
I'm excited for this one.
I'm really excited because given the position of everybody's heads right now, I can sort of look like I'm working Reid as a hand puppet, which is good.
Yeah.
Looking down on Nathan.
Yeah. But this is an interesting new kind of show we're doing today. This video is from Earthling Ed. Is that right? Earthling Ed. He's a vegan activist, and yeah, I don't think I would classify this conversation as SE, but it's like so close that maybe if we reviewed it, we could give Earthling Ed, if he ever watches this, some recommendations for things that he could potentially do to help his conversations related to veganism, and it's just, it's just right on the edge. So it's interesting for me.
Is it?
Yeah, sure. I don't think it's close at all.
Yeah. I'd give it maybe like a 35-45% SE. Maybe he definitely has questions in his conversation, and those seem to be more effective than his facts that he's bringing up. And the attitudinal disposition he has raises the tension in the talk throughout the entire thing, and it kind of ends on a sour note. So I'd say that's not so very SE, though. The times in which he is asking questions seems to be fruitful for him and in his arguments. So we'll see. Yeah, what the rating is after we're done watching it.
I can't wait to look at this. I haven't seen it, but
oh, you haven't?
I haven't seen it yet, but I lean towards veganism, although I'm a bit of a hypocrite because I'm not veganism. I do eat meat, but I'm really keen to look at it because when I do the practice sessions, I get people to SE me on my view. Why do I lean towards veganism? And I have to admit, I haven't got very good reasons. So over the last couple of times people have SE'd me, my confidence has dropped a little bit. So I'm just leaning towards it. So let's see if I can learn something.
I think this conversation is interesting because like the chap whose video it is clearly has spent a lot of time talking about this. He clearly goes around and interviews on this, so his points are articulate, clear, concise, really well made, very, very effective communicator about his position, and he's sitting next to somebody who seems to have just been emotionally reacting to his presence in this space and just kind of wants to get that out and express that in some way and doesn't have clear articulable talking points. But I was interested in the framing there because Reid, you suggested that maybe SE was something that the gentleman could potentially adopt to be more effective in presenting his view. But I actually think SE would be much more effective for the interlocutor here to be adopting. So rather than her being emotionally very angry and very charged and trying to just kind of explain why she's feeling frustrated, she could be using SE to explore his position and not leave any of this sort of frustration out in the open there. The other thing is the lead for this video, which he teases, which is right at the very end, as Abstract was saying, like is right at the very end of the video. Like he puts right up front, which I think is a really unfortunate framing. It's like the least charitable component of the video is right at the very front of the video as a tease. And I think that's kind of unfortunate as well.
That might be more of like a publication thing. Like I'm trying to get clicks, and a great way to retain my audience is to show how heated things are going to get.
Yeah. Anyway, let's get into the video.
All right.
I see everything that has a soul. I try to treat every single thing with respect.
But you're appropriating indigenous culture to justify arbitrarily harming.
I'm appreciating indigenous culture.
Hey Q, nice to meet you. My name's Ed, and today I'm at the University of Dallas with a banner that says, "Why aren't you vegan yet?" You've been listening to a conversation I've just been having.
Yes.
And it seems like you have some questions or some ideas or thoughts. So let me know what you think.
So my first question for you is, what is your opinion on the native tribes such as the Inuit who live up in Alaska who don't have easy access to these fresh produce that you're wanting them to eat and instead rely on the animals they hunt?
Yeah, well, the issue of what we do to animals is an issue of necessity. This question of veganism comes down to the options and choices that we have. So
right off the bat, he lets her ask him questions. That's different. And she said something, and now he is responding with facts. So that's very different from Missy right off the bat.
Right.
Also, it's very competitive. She's her tone of voice is aggression, defense, a lot of emotion in there. So it's not a collaborative discussion. It's
very confrontational.
Confrontational, yeah.
But he did really well in not reflecting that hostile tone. Like she was, there was a lot of energy. There was a lot of sort of barbs to that. He responded very calmly, very even voiced. You know, he kept it low, and I think that was really well handled from his perspective. But
So,
yeah.
I think, like you said at the beginning, she was listening to a conversation he had previous to this, and I think she's coming in hot. Like, she's like, "I heard what you said to that guy. I have to like set you straight," and then he's like coming in calm. So, I mean, kudos to him for, keeping it low energy.
Well, that's what I was going to say. It makes you wonder what happened before this conversation, because something has to have happened before it for her to be this heated or this engaged already.
Also, the conversation can be altered when you have an audience, like listening in close by can make us self-conscious, feel like we need to score points. Which, if we're in that mentality of like, I need to score points, then it deprives us the opportunity to reflect and to revise our position. So that can also make things more difficult. Right off the bat, though, his statement was about necessity, and he was making an argument about necessity, and that might have been better prosed in the form of a question. Is this a matter of necessity? Something to that effect might have encouraged the conversation partner to think about what is the contingent thing that makes this morally good or bad.
Yeah, I guess as we're watching this debate, at least in my head, I'm trying to think of the claim, and I think the claim is virtually all humans should be vegan is the claim that the guy Earthling Ed is making. And I'm just now trying to map out all these arguments and how they connect and the assumptions and the validity and the soundness of the reasons.
Right.
That's just all that's going through my head. So
the lack of clarity about a specific position from the lady's perspective is very apparent, because she shifts it. I mean, because in this case they're both making claims. His claim is fairly consistent. You know, the preposition that veganism is a better position. Her claim becomes massively incoherent over time and changes quite often.
Yeah, I guess her claim is like, you shouldn't be out here doing this.
Right.
That might be the claim she's making.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, here we go.
Of veganism comes down to the options and choices that we have. So there are obviously people in the world who don't have the availability or the access to be plant-based or to be vegan, who are maybe in tribes and in indigenous communities where they don't have the access that you and I have, where we live with the means that we have. And so as a consequence of that, the morality of that situation is very different, because they hunt animals and eat animals out of necessity. But the point of me being here with the banner about why aren't you vegan yet is to draw on the fact that it's about you and I and the situation that we have and the means that we have, which is why it becomes a moral issue for us.
I mean, you talk about, us like we are not part of these indigenous tribes. I mean, these indigenous tribes, yes, they live, out remote away from, civilization, but many of them, they don't see veganism as like, they don't want veganism because they...
What about you?
I don't want to be vegan.
And why don't you want to be vegan?
Sorry,
Because...
Yep.
Just what we can see here, just what I'm thinking as I see this is that he's responded with evidence, and now we're sort of jumping from leaf to leaf to leaf, and we're not staying focused. Whereas if he, as we've suggested, if he had have asked a question, it might have helped her to stay focused on what's her claim and what's her reasons for it. So because he's responded with evidence, she's already defensive. She's in the mode of, how am I going to counterattack this? And she's just throwing out another claim now, counter evidence, making more claims. So we're jumping from claim to claim to claim without staying focused on the one claim. Just an observation.
Yeah.
I don't want to be vegan.
And why don't you want to be vegan?
Because one, I I'm a neurotic, which means I'm very sensitive to certain things. So I already am, picky about what I eat. And so trying to find like a substitute for the nutrients that I need is very risky. So eating meat that I know, meat that I understand, it helps me that way. However, with these indigenous tribes, they because you have to understand, veganism is very much a white colonized thought. It very much is.
Well, people say that, but then also people say that when you look at the roots of non-harming animals for diets, it's deep-rooted in places like Hindu cultures and Jainist cultures. And so the idea of abstaining from eating animals is very much deep-rooted in kind of like Buddhist, Hindu and Jainist cultures, and not necessarily in a white colonialist process.
It was a very fallacious move there in any case, because you're arguing about whether this thing is good or not. If Adolf Hitler was recommending this, it wouldn't change whether the thing itself was implicitly good or bad.
Right.
And it's a sort of unfortunate move there.
It seemed like whataboutism, and then he kind of had another whataboutism back at her.
So I think an interesting thing maybe to explore was like he asked, why don't you want to be vegan? And she lists off. I think she started with one, which was very picky, I'm very neurotic, like I need certain nutrients. And I think a good follow-up question was that like would have been like if you could find the nutrients and you could find something that works for you and not harm animals, would you do that? Like that? I don't know.
Yeah, that would be the SE line probably.
Yeah, that would have been a good
That would be the real reason check. Or close to it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Maybe like she's appealing to a certain kind of cultural value. And I think she's putting herself inside of that culture, or at least she's wanting to be that kind of person who lives in that culture. And that kind of culture is not vegan. So he's out there telling her potentially not to be, something that she identifies with. And that's causing problems. That's what I'm seeing.
It is weird because she hasn't actually made that move. She hasn't explained that to him, that she identifies with this cultural narrative, right? This idea, this cultural identity, or way of adopting a worldview from a specific culture. So her referencing this indigenous culture is not, for him anyway, it would be a complete non sequitur.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say she's not Inuit, and like race wise, or that kind of. I don't think she's exactly from that kind of place, or has history related to that. I would make that assumption.
I think it's more like her saying there are cultures who are eating meat and they have good reasons to do that. Therefore, eating meat is okay, and it's also okay for me. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah, and his response to that though was really good. Though he's saying, "Look, there's a necessity issue. I'm not talking to them. I'm here talking to people who do not have to eat meat out of necessity." But so now the energy stayed the same, but the point shifted, and it's a fairly classic thing.
Yes, but like in Hinduism, they don't eat cows. They believe cows are sacred, but they eat other meats.
Well, not many don't, and historically many haven't as well. So I'm just saying that it's not strictly true that this idea of non-harm to animals is a strictly white colonialist thought. So I don't know if that holds up historically speaking.
Yeah, historically speaking, it's not. But this sudden boom of veganism is historically colonial.
What do you mean by colonial in this context then?
I mean colonial as in the white colonizers, as in the Europeans coming colonizing half the world. I mean the Americans colonizing the West. There's a recent surge in, white liberals who believe they're doing good and who believe, such as, you and I. And I'm not saying vegan is bad. Veganism is not bad. If you want to be vegan, be vegan.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
But when it comes...
Yeah,
for the definition here, but I think it was a little bit too late because you already answered to the claim that it was mostly white colonialism mindset or whatever. And then after the fact, he asked what she meant by that. So, but still, that's good to ask.
I would definitely try to do this. Like, what is the connection between white liberal ideas and values? How does that, if something is that, does that mean most people should not be that, or indigenous people can't be that, or shouldn't? I don't know. I'm just wondering what the connecting assumption is there.
Are there any things that white liberals value that you also value? I mean, is it just if it's a white liberal value, then it must be evil? Like, I mean, what is? Yeah.
If we found an indigenous tribe that was purely vegan, would that mean it's okay to be vegan?
Yeah,
like an outsider test for culture, or like prestigious culture in our mind.
Or would this argument have as much weight as you're giving it right now? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Or if if there was proof of white colonialism spreading the consumption of meat.
Yeah.
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 Not bad. If you want to be vegan, be vegan.
Yeah, cool.
But when it comes to pressuring other people who don't want this and who have different beliefs. For instance, are you aware of the view of cosmocentrism?
No, you explain it to me.
So cosmocentrism is a worldwide view believed by many of its indigenous tribes in which everything is equal to each other. Me, you, the trees, the grass, the water, the rocks, the animals are all equal to each other. And animals hear us and they understand us. And so with many people, such as the not the Inuit.
Reid, I would have asked including the apple on the desk at that point.
Does the apple have?
Oh no! This is the tip of this iceberg here. It gets very strange, and there's some interesting questions about that particular belief that she seems to add extra syllables to every time she says.
Yeah.
Animals hear us and they understand us. And so with many people, such as the not the Inuit tribe, there's another tribe in Alaska, starts with a K, I can't remember at the moment. They believe that the earth was made by the raven. Their god, to put it in terms, is a raven.
Yeah.
But they hunt elk and they hunt moose. Yeah. But they don't just hunt them, they respect the animal. They take everything from the animal and they thank the animal. Yeah. And they thank the animal in several ways. They don't talk about hunting moose. They just say, I'm gonna go out. Because they know the moose hears them. And if they say, I'm gonna go hunt moose, the moose hears that and says, they are not worthy to have me.
Oh, okay.
They are not worthy to eat me. Yeah. And so it hides.
Because they presumably.
So just tracking one response to most humans should be vegan. She's saying, I think, well, if you respect the animals that you kill, then it's probably more okay to not be vegan. And that's what I'm hearing.
Don't want to be.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting claim to explore. This what she called it, cosmocentrism.
Yeah, it's called cosmocentric or cosmocentrism. Yeah.
Centrism. Yeah.
So far, I've heard about 20 claims, and I'm not sure which one's being explored.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I don't know if this would be a good question to ask, but could you ask, if I were to hunt and kill you, and as you lay bleeding out, I thank you for your sacrifice and I respect you, would that be justified? Would that be okay?
They kind of get into that in a moment, but I think one of the interesting things is that if both the person and the animal are all equal, why is it's the person acting on the animal to kill them for their food, not the human choosing to suffer and starve and protect the animal? Why is it one way better than the other in that case? It doesn't seem to make sense.
Yeah, some comments here. Never associated veganism with colonialism. Odd flex there. Yeah, that's weird.
Okay.
Yeah.
So veganism is elitist. Like, speaking on that, like, maybe what she's trying to say possibly is that there are people that are more privileged, people that are in a better way, like suitably to go out and go to the grocery store. Like, it's very accessible, and there are other places where it's not as accessible, and you trying to force your way of life on them, even when it's not accessible to them, is incorrect or wrong. Maybe, I don't know.
I think in any case he dealt with that point earlier. Yeah, because he was saying that I'm not there talking to these people. I'm not talking to people in a position where that is actually possibly a consideration. He's talking to people who have choices.
Which he rebuts here in a second, I think, with something. Here we go.
Killed if they're going to be alerted to that. But the point that I'm making is that I'm not in those areas of the world talking to indigenous people in those areas. I'm talking to people here. And whilst we may make the argument that when we look at the rise of veganism as a popular cultural thing, it's kind of emerging from places in Europe, Australia, and the US. Actually, when you look at the growth rates of veganism, in America, one of the biggest demographics in terms of adopting veganism are African Americans. And so to make the claim that it's a strictly white colonialist thing doesn't hold up, especially as white vegans aren't going to indigenous communities in Alaska and aren't trying to impose that on them. I'm here in Dallas talking to people like yourself.
Physically, but through social media, there has been a push of people saying, Inuit tribes who hunt beluga whales, which are not endangered in any way, people are saying that's wrong, you can't do that, and they say that is our only source of nutrients.
But at the same time, what can be easy to do, especially when we have views about a certain group of people, is we can take people from that group who kind of maybe portray views that could be considered extremist or views that could be considered impractical, and we can use those to try and almost, caricature the whole movement itself. And so I'm not going to disagree that there are certain vegans who will make that claim, but by and large, most vegans, including myself, have a more of a nuanced understanding that there are people in the world who have a different relationship based on the environment that they live in, and hence I'm not going to make the claim that people who are hunting belugas out of necessity to survive should be held to the same moral standard that you and I can with the choices that we have. See, that's what's important.
You say moral standard because you're saying that them hunting beluga is morally wrong.
No, I'm saying in a situation of necessity, it's different. Like with humans, if I said, shooting a human is morally wrong, it is. But if you have to shoot a human out of necessity, then it becomes morally justified. So I can say harming an animal is morally wrong, but if you have to harm the animal to survive, then it can become justified. So issues of morality are always nuanced based on the circumstances. But by and large, the general rule should be, if we can avoid causing unnecessary harm to someone, morally speaking, we should try to pursue that option. What do you think about that?
I mean,
good explanation there, but it's giving reasons, giving facts on that opposite side.
Giving reasons, giving facts. Might have been something you can do if you made an analogy for like justified versus unjustified, self-defense, like self-defense versus murder, and like the difference between those two, and then ask a question to see whether or not it can correlate. I mean, that's a different road you can go down where you can actually ask questions rather than make facts and statements.
Just as a side note, the beluga whale is listed as near threatened by the WWF.
All right.
What do you think about that?
I mean, I fully agree. And so my question is just, why are you here asking these people why we're not vegan? What is your reason for that?
Because it's a thing that we don't often think about. It's an idea that most of us don't kind of like consider when we're buying food. And most of us in society are against animals being unnecessarily harmed. And so morally speaking, we already agree that reducing suffering for animals is morally preferable. But when we go into a supermarket or onto an ordering app or whatever, and we buy food, we don't really think about the process of what we're supporting because, it's culturally normalized. We've been raised with that. And so the purpose of me being here isn't with this kind of naive opinion that everyone's going to sit down, agree with me and be like, hey, Ed, I'm going to be vegan now. But it's to try and maybe ask questions and talk about topics that people maybe haven't considered, and to try and get maybe a deeper reflection on those values and ideas, because it is a moral issue, and morally we do agree with reducing suffering. It's just that we haven't always thought about the suffering that occurs for our food that we consume.
Well, one thing I just want to again point out is like his calmness and non-reflection of this aggression and energy and tone is genuinely commendable. Like, he's sticking to his points, he's delivering his messages, which is, in this case, he's entitled to do because he's being asked about his opinions. I just really think that's definitely a thing we can learn from this video, just that calm tone, even in the face of this agitated expression of sort of hostility almost.
Also, I like the fact that he jumped straight to the moral intuition. We both have this in common. He's gone right to the deep core value of we all want to minimize suffering in the world. And that's what we do in SE. We want to go to that. What do we have in common? Oh, well, it's okay. So we'll just start from there and see why our strategies are different. I like that.
One thing that I think could have helped to calm down the whole tone of the conversation would be to go slower, take more time to think, because she's just so agitated that she falls over herself trying to get everything out as quickly as possible, and he's also replying very quickly, speaking very fast. But I think simply just taking that down a notch, that could have helped.
Yeah, I think it might be a useful thing to note. I've definitely felt as this lady is feeling in conversations sometimes, and it's definitely not the right. In SE we talk about being in the right frame of mind to engage in the conversations, even begin. The idea that you want to be calm and just not be looking to challenge and not energized or adrenaline getting up about anything, because the moment you take that into a conversation, you're just going to make it so much more difficult to be effective in whatever your goal is. I think this is a good example of not being potentially in the right emotional state or mental framework to be effective as a communicator of your ideas.
Yeah,
Imagine me sitting there.
her amygdala has been triggered, so she's in constant fight or flight mode right up until this point, and so it's hard to think clearly when you've got all that cortisol, adrenaline pumping through the body.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sort of, I wonder how, I mean, this video is actually doing very well and is going around the world at this point, and people are looking at it, and I think in many ways it's one of those problems with these kinds of videos, right? Is like you don't want to be your worst self in these moments, right? You don't want you want to be your best self when you're addressing these kind of topics, and doubly so, I guess, when you're on camera. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Yeah, his goals sound very similar to the goals of the reflection type part of it, but he's also wanting to change people's minds about a specific issue, but he's not. It's different from SE because he doesn't want to change people's minds about the epistemology related to this kind of issue. Potentially, he's wanting to go straight to the issue and just change people's minds about that, rather than help people reflect on ways of thinking about these kinds of things and letting the cards fall where they may. He wants people to be vegan.
It's a very common activist narrative, just that raising awareness is sufficient. And I wonder, he's doing a good job of articulating his points, and I think potentially being effective at changing minds. But yeah, I wonder if the raise awareness is his primary ambition.
So maybe his target is the people watching it, not really her.
Which might be why he's deliberately being much calmer, because he knows, he clearly seems to have more media experience, and I'm wondering whether that's at play here. Like he knows he can't elevate in the way that maybe he would do if the cameras weren't there. I don't know.
Yeah, if this was a genuine SE type conversation, he would probably shift to being more curious about, her reasoning process and asking questions and be open-minded. And his goal, even though he has this overall goal of, I want to raise awareness around veganism, or I want people to become vegan, that might be his goal, that he has confidence in that position. But in this moment, when he's having the conversation, there's no immediate physical threat to anyone. So as an SEer, we would shift the focus to just being genuinely curious about what her reasons are and being open to seeing if she has good reasons. And we would ask questions to help us both reflect on that. That's the key difference I see.
I think I would just try to maybe, because that'll focus on this cosmocentrism thing a little bit more, because that seems really interesting, that philosophy that I think feels like a big driver of why she holds this opinion, or has it. Yeah.
And a great way you could just repeat back the cosmocentrism argument, so that way she understands that he understands what that argument is, and then he can make an outsider test for that.
Yeah.
That would have been far more effective than just moving on to more facts.
Yep.
Take that argument you heard and then just apply a hypothetical scenario where now the roles are reversed and us humans are like the animals, and there's some other species above us hunting us, and that's the outsider test for that.
If cosmocentrism is actually a reason for her,
if that's really the reason, right?
Right. Yeah. That would have to be established first. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Is the argument that what was the claim again? Something about equal.
It's 20. It's 20 claims.
Which one? Yeah.
Everything is equal to each other.
Everything. Yeah.
So,
that's the cosmocentric position. Yeah.
Yeah. If I thought this was true, how does that relate to eating animals or being vegan? It's like everything is morally equal.
Yeah, I've been reading about the worldview a little bit, and it is basically, you start off by being selfish, and then you extend it to your family, then your country, essentially, then your tribe and country, world, and then essentially cosmocentrism is saying you're the center of the things that are considered to be you, extends to the entire universe, the cosmos, everything, including rocks, trees, plants, and everything, which makes the entire thing sort of eat itself somewhat, because if everything's equal, then why should anything happen?
Why
does
should
it
there
matter
be any
whether
morality?
Should everything just freeze in time? Is that the
Right.
ideal state in the world? And not interact, not be harmed? I don't know.
it makes the reason why she might, the hunters might act on the deer somewhat. There's definitely something in that is going unnoticed by her, I think.
Yeah,
Isn't that basically moral nihilism? Isn't that saying nothing is morally wrong if everything is equal? It
that's
doesn't make any
I'm hearing a potential connecting assumption, but I may be wrong with that.
But there's not much you couldn't excuse on this basis if it's all equal. Right? I stole money from Janosch. Well, technically it's all everybody's money.
This is why we do scales. Like if you were to discover that this cosmocentrism argument wasn't a good argument to be using to reach your level of confidence, how much would that drop your confidence by? And that would be a great way to see if that's actually really truly the thing that they're weighing their confidence in before you go into it. Yeah. Well, we should probably keep going.
Yeah, let's go.
Food that we consume.
Okay, so I know, because I was raised in the Texas education system.
Yeah.
I'm sure many people here were.
I'm sure.
We were all taught high school, like health class or whatever, how fast food was made, and they show us like the slaughter camps and all of that of the animals and whatnot, and they try to traumatize us and whatnot, and they're like, don't eat fast food, that's why you only eat real meat and whatever.
Right, yeah.
But then they don't say that that exact same process happens for real meat. So one, that's a whole issue, but you have the plant-based produce, right? You have who is growing this plant-based produce? It's immigrants who are undocumented, who are being paid cents a day they are being exploited on their own reason.
Yeah.
Yes, animals are being exploited and they're being harmed, but so are humans.
Yeah.
And so you saying that, what's, morally, overall better to have plant-based, that's also it's a gray area, because you're also furthering harm on these people.
So we have a very imperfect system, not just agriculturally speaking, but just generally speaking.
Yeah.
There is a huge amount of exploitation that happens in all different systems, and that's unfortunately a thing that needs to be challenged. So I will never say that veganism is perfect, that plant-based production is perfect. It isn't. What it is it's a reduction of harm. And the reason it's a reduction of harm is because everything you just described in terms of what's happening to humans happens in the animal farming industries as well. It's the same people growing the feed for the animals. It's the same people working in the factory farms and undocumented migrants. And it's those people working in slaughterhouses. And slaughterhouse work has been shown to increase rates of PTSD, mental health problems, suicide, drug and alcohol abuse. So the situation of animal farming also causes intense human suffering, and in many ways the same, and also with an add-on of what happens in a slaughterhouse. So it's a reduction of suffering, but it doesn't mean we should stop there. We should challenge that, and what we need is a plant-based food system that takes out the animal suffering and challenges that suffering of humans as well, to create a fairer system for everyone.
Pay attention to her body language and her facial expression.
God, yeah.
She is not willing to listen to this. She's not taking it in, not considering it at all. And I mean, going on later on in the video, they talk over each other repeatedly, and it also shows they're not really listening to each other. So.
I mean, to be fair, she could have just eaten a wasp. We don't know that she didn't. But the one thing that I think is putting pressure on this conversation is his control of the microphone. So when he has the microphone pointed at him, he's in control, and she's effectively silenced in this conversation. And you'll notice that he starts to use that increasingly as this video starts to get more heated.
Okay.
I agree. Have you considered going about it perhaps the other way? Saying, we need to focus on humans first. We need to focus on getting these undocumented immigrants, one, that, making them welcome in this country, giving them fair pay, giving them fair rights, all of these things, making them not fear being deported, because then once you get their support, they'll be much more likely to help us in reducing the harming of animals. They'd be able to help us, say, to go on strike against these slaughter facilities. You know, it's all about how you go about things. Yes,
we can do both at the same time, though, is the argument I'd make. But we can tackle this animal exploitation and the human animal exploitation at the same time and create a system which is growing plants which is best for animals and takes into consideration the rights of these humans.
So much better as a question. Can we do both at the same time? And then just stop.
Yeah.
And then the silence will speak so much louder than the rest of all of this. Yeah.
I don't think there would be silence, but yes, I would agree with
Probably
that. It would be
not.
much more effective as a question. Well, one thing I think is also interesting is that at no point, she definitely is changing her arguments as the questions seem to address her points. But at no point has she ever said, that's a good point. Okay, but have you considered this additional thing? No, it's almost as if the train just keeps going and we don't pretend that it's actually changed direction completely for no reason. And it's just an interesting and unfortunate characteristic of the way this conversation is happening.
So that we create a fairer system for everyone.
in a perfect world, we can go about it at the same time. This is not a perfect world, and that it would be an incredibly difficult thing to do. And so,
but it's incredibly difficult, whatever, so we might as well try to do that. And the first thing we can do is abstain from the animal products, and then with our time, if this is something like you yourself clearly care about and for a righteous and just reason, we can take out the animals and then campaign to create accountability for the farmers to make sure that they're treating humans right. Of course it's going to be a challenge, but it's a challenge whichever route we take, so let's take the route that gets us to where we want to be for the benefit of everyone.
His tone's escalated. He's talking faster. He took the microphone away from her mid-sentence.
That's another thing with that microphone, is it makes the conversation partner feel like you have all the power because you can literally just point it at yourself and them. Yeah.
That
There's
facial
power
expression.
imbalance.
The facial expression. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a bit of a
There's
mock.
no way if I saw someone talking to me with that face, I'm going to take anything they say seriously.
Yeah, right.
That is a condescension, like
Yeah.
maximum condescension type face, and that's just going to cause defensiveness. And this is not how human psychology is best. You know, if we, it's so frustrating.
Do we think
Earthling
he's just
Ed,
playing?
hit me up.
Do we think he's
chat.
just playing to the camera at this point? Like, do we think it's a performance piece? It's just, he's doing this for the viewers.
That
Potentially,
might be part of it. Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe he's even.
I mean, either way, you're going for the benefit of everyone. That way is just your worldview. You're wanting to help the animals first and then humans second.
We can do both at the same time.
Yes, but you are deliberately going animals first, slaughterhouses, then to the agricultural plants. It doesn't matter if you are also helping humans in that slaughterhouses. Your main focus is those animals, is it not?
My main focus is to create a better agricultural system for everyone, and veganism is that, because veganism isn't just about consuming plants, it's about creating a system that reduces exploitation, and that's not just to non-human animals. So as a
I believe that would have been interesting if she had asked him, if she had done SE and asked the question, if you had to make a choice, if you could either help the workers being exploited or you could help the animals, what would be your choice?
Mm.
That would have been interesting. And I mean, I thought it was an interesting point that she made. You are focusing on the animals, and it's an assumption, but I think it's a fair assumption at this point, and it might be true. So.
I think another thing to point out, I don't know if I was having this conversation, I don't know if I would point this out or how I would, but like the animals don't have a voice to speak up, and like, I mean, they obviously have like body language, like saying, I don't want to be killed. Like, and they're probably going to try to run away or not be slaughtered. But there's this group of people that don't have a way to speak up for themselves. So like, is Ed like sort of their champion? Like, is he the one like speaking up for people or for the animals who don't have a voice? And like, that's makes it a little bit different, because the workers being exploited, there could be, I don't know, ways that they could say, I don't want to be exploited. I don't know, maybe.
Later on, she talks about the possibility of workers going on strike. Like if she suggests that he should convince the workers that veganism is better, and then they could go on strike or whatever. Animals can do that.
good use of scales here. What, like, if genocide is a 10, 0 is like, I don't know, something.
Peace on Earth.
Peace on Earth. Where is human worker exploitation? Where is slaughterhouses? Where does all this fit together?
Right.
Yeah.
Vegan, I wouldn't be, if we had a situation where it was just plant-based agriculture, but everything you're describing still exists. Well, as vegans, I would hope, and I certainly would as a vegan, think, well, this isn't where we want to be. So I'm not saying that it's about just animals. I'm saying it's about humans as well. But we shouldn't just say, hey, let's try and help the humans in slaughterhouses, but not help the animals in slaughterhouses, when we can help animals and humans in slaughterhouses by not paying for it, and then help those workers.
Plant-based products from those type of companies? Do you know those companies that do that? Are you avoiding that, or are you still buying from those companies?
Well, the supply chain is murky, isn't it? And so I can't sit here and say honestly that I don't pay for that to happen, because I can't honestly say that. But that doesn't mean that I agree with it. And if I had the choice in front of me in a supermarket to say, hey, this comes from here and this comes from here, if I had that choice, I would buy that. But we don't have that choice yet because the supply chains are so, ubiquitously bad.
Yeah,
so we need to challenge that as well.
Meat-based products. There are companies that do that, but there are also companies that don't. There are organically grown.
But they still cause harm. They still end up in the same slaughterhouses. They're still killed in the same way.
No. I'm talking about those that are like very local, very.
Yeah, I know.
They kill animals again in a humane way. Again, the idea is that.
But what does humane mean? When we say humane.
If you kill them in a humane way where they don't feel pain, in a halal way, right? They don't feel pain, where they are cooked a certain way, right? They don't have any added stuff, any non.
But what is halal? How do they kill animals halal?
They kill them without pain.
This is the first time he's actually asking her a question.
Right, and
it's exploring her position.
Right.
And he knows damn well that she doesn't know what halal is. Yeah. And it's really unfortunate that he's using this as a tactic to make her seem stupid, rather than as a way of actually getting her to think about her position in a better way. And also there's all kinds of naturalism fallacy, the idea that something's natural therefore it's good. There's like the idea that if you somehow slaughter a cow in a sort of organic fashion, then somehow the cow's going to be cool with it, is just so strange a position to hold. I don't understand it. And incidentally, halal is not considered to be humane, which is, if you listen in a moment, sorry, I think I interjected too soon, but if you listen in a moment, I think he seems to agree with her that halal is humane, which is odd because most of the animal protection people don't tend to consider halal a humane method of slaughter. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I think he's asked that question because it seems like he's also in fight or flight mode. His amygdala has been triggered as well, and it's like they're in a conflict cycle. It's like no one's taking the time to explore the views of the other genuinely. It's just, I'm going to prove you wrong. I'm defensive. I'm right, and it's passing evidence, facts to facts.
At the same time, though, it is a fair question. So
he's working towards the gotcha moment.
Yeah, I don't think it's fair.
It's not fair. I mean, she brought it up.
Yeah. Well,
are there? Sorry, go ahead, Joe.
Sorry. Yeah. No, I think he realizes she's under the misconception that halal is killing the animal in a painless way, like they kill the animal where they feel no pain, and so he's trying to and then at that point she's making the argument: if you take somebody's life but they don't feel any pain when you take their life, it's moral, or it's more moral than the next way to kill them. I don't know. I think he's trying to point that out. Even if you kill them in a halal way, that's not good to kill animals.
I definitely think he's setting up a trap.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
How do they kill animals halal?
They kill them without pain.
How describe the process?
I cannot tell you specifically because I'm not Muslim.
But you can tell me that they die without pain, but you can't tell me how they're killed.
Yes, because I have Muslim friends and I ask them, I'm like, what does halal mean? They say basically they're killed in a very specific way where they, as less pain as possible.
Can I tell you how they're killed?
Yeah, this is a spiraling conflict. This is a conflict cycle. Both are in fight or flight, and it's spiraling in one direction. You can see it clearly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They have their throats cut, but they're not rendered unconscious. So they're conscious and they have their throats cut.
Is that how they're killed in the halal way?
Yeah. Kosher and halal, that's what it means.
But, okay, so, again, that's all about anatomy.
Do you think that sounds compassionate?
It's more compassionate than other ways of killing them.
It is, but is it more compassionate than not killing them?
They're gonna. The base of the problem is, if you have respect for the animal, right?
Can you respectfully cut their throat for an unnecessary
Yes.
reason?
That's what indigenous people do. Indigenous people hunt in a respectful way.
But people who buy meat from slaughterhouses when they don't have to.
From slaughterhouses, no. But again, if you go from organically sourced, small, very small companies, their meat is expensive because they are so small. But
they're still killed in the same way, though. They may be raised slightly different, but they're still killed in the same way. The standards still apply. Halal, kosher, or even just the US.
Yeah. What I can see happening here is, so both in fight or flight, and she's committed to her position. She's not open-minded at all. She's not thinking about whether she has good reasons for it. And so one of the defense mechanisms when we feel threatened is we'll try to rationalize. So we will reason backwards.
Right.
And that's what she's doing. She's reasoning backwards, and she's stuck in this moment of cognitive dissonance where I cannot be seen to be wrong. I need to justify what I've just said. And she's struggling. She's struggling to try and find some moment of rationality to reason, some good reason to fight back with, to justify a position. And that's what tends to happen when you're in fight or flight, or you're closed-minded and you're going to accept your position. You're not going to be open-minded and reflect on whether you've got good reasons for it. You're just going to reason backwards and look for evidence or justification to demonstrate that you're right, because you're afraid of maybe looking like you're wrong. And unfortunately, that's a value that humans have.
I think this is what it looks like when we talk about being wrong feels like being right. I mean, she feels that she's right, so I think she's feeling like the argument should come. She should be able to explain it, and it should be easy for him to understand this, because she feels that she's right. And I think that idea of that feeling being like, if being wrong feels a lot like being right, is definitely worth thinking about.
I think there's a lot of cognitive dissonance now, and I think she feels very insecure in the idea of being right, but she feels threatened. She feels attacked, and she is just in defense mode, and not for herself, but probably also for her friends, because they're Muslims. They explained to her halal is painless. Now he's telling me they are basically bad people because they're eating halal meat, which means just cutting their throat without.
That's a really interesting point.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's a comment underneath this YouTube video saying that she's grasping at so many straws that she could clean up the ocean, which I thought was very funny, but sort of mean-spirited, but kind of true. I don't know how to feel about that one.
Mm-hmm.
Humane regulations, it's the same in all slaughterhouses.
So they're raised in the same way. They still are able to have a better life. They're able to go out in the pastures, and they're able to live life as a cow.
But they're still killed in a slaughterhouse.
But you can kill them. I'm saying you can kill them in the cosmocentric worldview. You can kill them in a respectful way, where you thank the animal, where you.
Does that help the animal? Does us thanking the animal
in a
help the
cosmocentric worldview? Yes, it does.
But would it not be better just to eat the plants?
No, because
morally there's no difference.
Microphone. Power.
The power,
Is this an appeal to cultural relativism? Like, I think it has to be, right?
She's claiming it as a worldview, though, not like a. I mean, she kind of derived it from a cultural narrative, so it's kind of gotten a bit muddy. But yeah,
it's hard to know. It's hard to know what it is, because he's not taking the time to dive deep to really understand what her thoughts are.
They're both jumping around. He's saying, she's saying there are ways to kill them in a more humane way. He's saying, no, they're always killed the same way, basically, which it's not addressing what she's saying. He's just saying every single time they're being killed the same way. No, they're not. You can kill an animal in different ways. And then, of course, when he says that, she jumps back to, well, there are ways in these cultures where, in her mind, it's justified. It's okay to do that. And also in his mind, it's justified because they have no other choice, right? So.
Yeah, a good clarifying question is, just because some culture or worldview says something is okay, does that necessarily make it okay?
Mm-hmm. I think this whole conversation would need to pivot on to her assumed claim that the cosmocentrism worldview is a better way of viewing the world, right? And I think essaying that claim would be very effective. I think maybe helping her notice that actually this isn't quite working in all states, and maybe there's some problems with this worldview. Because to make a claim that you can kill an animal, but say thank you, and that makes it okay, seems very strange a position.
Yeah, Miriam.
No difference.
Has to remain balanced. So if
There's
you
no balance in animal farming. Animal farming destroys balance. It destroys the environment. We're artificially breeding animals into existence. We're selectively breeding them, giving them hormones, and then we're killing them in slaughterhouses. But we're talking about slaughterhouses right now.
I'm not talking about slaughterhouse. I'm talking about locally grown ranges,
Which
right?
still go to the same slaughterhouses.
They do not go to the same slaughterhouses, my dude.
They do. They may be raised differently, but they're killed in the same ways. They're killed in the same methods with the same techniques.
did you see that?
But they do not.
Did you see the cracking of the knuckles getting ready?
Oh, body language.
Differently, but they're killed in the same ways. They're killed in the same methods with the same
They're
techniques.
killed in the same ways, but they do not go to slaughterhouses. They stay at the ranch. These are their own meat suppliers. They grow and kill their own meat.
They may have local slaughterhouses, but it doesn't matter. They're killed in the exact same way. They may not go to some of the big industrial Smithfield slaughterhouses, but they're still killed in the same way. And for that individual animal, the experience that they endure is the same because the method and the action is still the same.
This is why Effie is great, right? For the last 5 minutes of this video, they've both been saying exactly the same thing at each other and getting absolutely nowhere. Right. And they're just saying it increasingly hostile, increasingly frustrated. They both sound like assholes at this point, and nobody's communicating anything. This is why SE is better.
Yeah.
Is still the same, but it's, again, least pain as possible, so they're cutting the throat at the right place where the cow honestly just falls unconscious. They don't feel
they bleed out. And are we saying that is it compassionate to unnecessarily kill someone else? Is that compassionate?
Someone else? No, it's an animal.
But we're animals too.
We are animals too, but we are different from animals in that we have conscious thought.
So do they. They're conscious. And if they're not a someone, what are they? A something?
They are something that I'm trying to explain the with cosmocentric worldview and with animism, right? Again, something indigenous people, most indigenous tribes believe in. There is a difference, right? You have to understand that the indigenous people, they were doing this before us.
But I'm not so interested in indigenous people. I'm not interested in people in those scenarios. I'm just talking about the everyday person.
He's not.
In those scenarios.
But she is. He's not, but she is.
Yeah.
This is when he should be asking her, how interested are you in this as being your reason? Because now, if he did that, he would be able to figure out if that's really her reason. A real reason check is really helpful in this regard. Because then, if it is really her reason, you can start asking questions about that rather than about all this other side tangents to get at the heart of why she's thinking the way she's thinking.
Right.
Just curious at this point, has anyone here been to a slaughterhouse or been near one?
Yeah, I have. That would freak me out.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can handle that personally.
Yeah,
I've been at the outside of a few. Yeah, in Oregon, there's the Tillamook factory that makes all the cheese.
Yeah.
Really?
There's I'm not trying to I'm not trying to promote or preach anything too much, but there's a documentary called Dominion, which is it's in Australia, where a lot of it focuses on the slaughterhouse methods, and they're methods that are common in places other than Australia, but they're Dominion, it shows the very graphic detail of what happens. And Joaquin Phoenix, the guy that plays the most recent Joker, he does voiceover because he's vegan in that documentary. It's pretty cool. But yeah.
Right.
I think it could be interesting to explore. I thought it was somewhat unfair of him to simply throw in kill someone. They were talking about animals, so
it was a leading question. Yeah,
she was justified in being a little bit confused why suddenly he's talking about someone, and then what are they? What if they're not someone? Are they something? That's but also it would be interesting in her worldview in this cosmocentrism. She said everything is equal, and then she said, "Well, but we're humans. We have That's right.
Yeah.
And that would have been a great time to slow down to make
Yeah.
that connection, but they're going a million miles a minute. It's hard to make that connection, right?
Yeah.
And that connection probably would have been very powerful, especially if it was delivered slowly and calmly without malice towards the other person, with the burden of understanding upon himself to try to really figure out where she's at.
This definitely has feels much more manipulative now on behalf of the interviewer.
Well, that's because we're breaking it down bit by bit.
Well, I also think because it's escalated. Like, he stopped trying to have a civil conversation because he realized that wasn't going anywhere, and he now feels like, I think this is just an opportunity, as the comment just said earlier, this is just soundbite generation now. It's just going to be clips that he can use for days.
Yeah.
If they had have agreed at the beginning with the goals, and if she had honest buy-in to, I'm going to be open to reflect. I want you to ask questions that I might not have been able to ask myself, to reflect on that quality of the relationship between my confidence and my reasons. If she bought into that and he made her feel comfortable, and they both bought into the message that it's okay to be wrong about things, and it's okay to say, maybe I haven't thought about that a little bit. If they both had bought into that at the beginning, this would be a completely different conversation.
Definitely.
And if they hadn't skipped the rapport building step. Yeah.
Has to be in their scenarios. I myself am trying to follow the cosmocentric worldview, and so I only try to buy meat products that were sourcely grown, raised, and slaughtered here, right? So I know that they living their full life. They were not stuck in 2x2 pens or whatever, but they were still respected, right?
But they don't live their full life. They killed, cows can live to 20, 25. They're killed at 12 to 24 months. And respect is a mutual thing. When you sat down with me, we've had a respectful conversation because we've listened, we've engaged with each other. We haven't shouted over each other, we haven't cursed, we haven't been nasty, and that's respectful because it's a mutual. I'm trying to understand your thoughts and your feelings, and I feel like you're reciprocating and doing the same for me. But what we do to animals isn't respectful because it's a non-consensual thing. We force them into these environments for something that we want.
Yeah, could be.
I beg to differ.
Yeah.
Non-consensual. Again, with the cosmocentric worldview, the moose will gladly give himself up to the hunter.
Does the cow gladly walk into the slaughterhouse and present their throat?
No, technically, no. But a cow is different from a moose in that they are domestic.
Sure,
right?
but they're still sentient, they still have feelings. To domesticate just means that we've kind of given them certain traits to make them more passive so we can farm them, but they're still inherently the sentient, conscious beings, just like the moose and the elks and other animals in the wild.
Yes, but it's hard to explain if I don't have my notes with me, but there is that nuanced difference that many indigenous tribes have followed. You have, for instance, the Comanche tribes, right, who hunted buffalo or the bison. They hunted them, some could argue, in an inhumane way. They would chase them off cliffs. They would kill them. They would feel harm. But they still thanked the animal. They still took everything from that animal. If we took everything from the cow and put it to use instead of just taking the meat and throwing the rest away.
We don't. We boil the bones down, turn into gelatin.
She's describing there that she doesn't have her notes with me. It makes me wonder, notes from what? Because this has all the hallmarks of her repeating something that when it was explained to her initially seemed very genuinely persuasive, and that she felt she understood, and has now taken that view into combat with somebody who holds a different view and has recognized now that she probably doesn't understand it and can't enact that persuasive performance that persuaded her.
Yeah, her goal isn't to reflect on her reasons. Her goal is to prove him wrong. That's
right.
The key difference. Yeah. He just jogged a memory of mine when he was talking about, cows have feelings. When I was an exchange student in Thailand, I remember driving along the highway past an abattoir. It was the first time I'd been close to one, and I heard gunshots going off, in a systemized way, and I heard the cows crying in the queue. I heard them crying. It sounded to me like they were crying. And that was the first time I'd experienced that and seen that. And that just jogged that memory then.
Wow.
So, I thought I read that when the Native Americans were chasing the buffaloes off the cliff, usually many more buffaloes died, and they could only eat maybe one or two, and they just left the other ones to rot. So
I think that was the Americans that did that. Native Americans, or maybe I don't know.
No,
I don't think that they've chased them off of cliffs though. The Native
I read
Americans.
that. I might be mistaken, but that's what I read, that they did chase them off cliffs, and they only took a few. And of course, they didn't. It was not to the extent of the Americans, like the Europeans coming to America and then shooting them and piling up like huge piles of bones, buffalo bones, but still not very sustainable.
It doesn't sound very humane, and I don't think in any case shouting thank you to the animal as it plummets to its death is going to change the moral framing there. But yeah,
one thing she just mentioned that she wants to try to be into this, whatever it's called, Cosmocentrism type worldview. So this is a threat to that potentially, and that could be a lot of what's driving it. Maybe
100%.
Yeah.
Throwing the rest away.
We don't. We boil the bones down, turn it into gelatin. We do use everything. We use blood and make it into different things. So we do use everything from the animal. But that issue of respect, again, I think you can do something more respectfully when you have to, which these indigenous tribes, they have to. But for most people in society, they're paying for animals to be put into a slaughterhouse when they don't have to. And these things are being done to these animals, and it's not consensual. They don't willfully walk there. So it's an unnecessary action that doesn't need to take place by the virtue of it being unnecessary. And we have an option that reduces that harm that we can cause. And that's the primary argument I'm trying to make, that we have a choice. We have choice. And when people have choice, that's when these issues become moral issues.
Would it be different if I were to say, grow my own chickens and kill my own chickens and eat them?
No, because we're still killing them. We're still taking their life from them when we don't have to. So whilst that system may be preferable for the chickens up until the point that they're killed, that point still has to arrive. And that point is when it becomes an immoral thing, because you're needlessly taking their life from them.
I'm not needlessly taking their life. I gotta eat.
But you don't have to eat them.
That can be argued, right?
Well, no. For most people, it can't be argued. That's the point. For most people, it can't be, and that's the point I'm making. For most people, they don't have to cut the throat of the chicken. They could just eat something else instead.
So a good question would have been, are there people who can go without eating meat? Or like, I mean, maybe that's a leading question, I'm wondering. Though I just want to see like how she's different than people that can go without eating meat, like, and shed a light on what she thinks that difference is.
She did say at the beginning, I think she believed that because of her something to do with the way she is, that she needed to eat meat, or it was more complicated to get her nutrients, I think, from other things. So I think she sort of had addressed that earlier in the video, but yeah, I don't think it would have been a leading question to ask you. Is it possible for people to live without eating? And then,
yeah,
is that objectively better if they can to do so?
Right.
Yeah.
Something else instead.
Yeah, okay, if you don't want to eat meat, don't eat meat, all right? That's the fair thing. But you trying to, you say broaden the horizons of these people, but really you're wanting to make them feel guilty for consuming these meat products.
No, I'm not trying to make anyone feel guilty. I'm just having a conversation where I'm asking people why they're not vegan and trying to establish their views on it. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty. I'm just trying to ask questions and respond to your questions that are authentic to my feelings and in a way that potentially allows us to reach some commonality, which I think is important here.
That's an accusation I see people get a lot. We're just asking questions. And I would say we're not just doing that for sure. And I don't think he's just asking questions either.
Right. Really?
Yeah, obviously. Yeah.
So I'm not trying to make you feel guilty, but interestingly, guilt is an emotion which comes from the sense of morals. If we feel guilty about something, it comes from the sense of there's something to feel guilty about. If I pick up a rock and throw the rock on the floor, I don't feel guilty. If I pick up a piglet and throw a piglet on the floor, I do, because I recognize that action is causing harm, and that's why I feel guilty. So guilt can often be a powerful emotion in helping us determine how we view something when it comes to that being right or wrong.
Last thought before I go to class. You were talking about picking up the rock, throwing it on the ground. Indigenous people see that rock as a soul. It has a soul,
sure.
Right? And so they also would not pick up a rock and throw it on the ground.
I'm not saying that I would do that, but I'm just saying that I would feel less guilty because I recognize that action causes less harm. And the feeling of guilt that you have comes from the concept that there's a notion of harm being inflicted.
So what that what indigenous people say. Is it true that rocks have souls? How does this relate to veganism? I don't have this role.
It seems at this point that would have been a more interesting conversation or a more fruitful conversation to like do the real reason check for this cosmocentrism thing and really just explore that. If the conversation was about that, it might have been more fruitful for him.
I think this relates back to what she was saying earlier when she was like, we have souls, these rocks have souls, like we're the same. And I mean, I don't know, like, what does that lead to? Like, if when you walk away from here, does the sidewalk, like you're walking on rocks? Are you stepping on souls? Like, it's just, there's so much that could like imply more morally, like what does that lead to?
If he leaves that conversation walking across the pavement or chooses to walk all over her, I think she would feel differently about those two outcomes, right? The pavement is not analogous to walking over a person, right? It's a very strange position. I wonder why she leaves.
Yeah, I'm not sure if this is her real reason. It seems like she's just grasping at straws, to defend a position that she's struggling to defend. And if they had those goals at the outset, he may have discovered, what is the real reason? What's the main thing?
Yeah. But that's definitely not his objective here, is it? He's there.
Yeah.
But I think him as well, in a way. I'm pretty sure that he said that he would not be causing harm if he picked up a rock and threw it on the ground. But he would with the piglet. And now she says, well, those indigenous people would see the rock as having a soul and would see that as causing harm. And then he said he would think that he would be causing less harm, not that he wouldn't be causing harm. And that's kind of, I believe that's not what he said. I might be mistaken. I might remember.
No, I think that was about correct for what he said. But I think that's in the sense that in the one sense of the rock, even if the rock does have a soul, that's not the same as saying a rock can suffer, but a pig can suffer, and therefore it both has a soul and has the capacity to feel pain and suffer.
And maybe it's a battle between these two decision-making principles, the radical egalitarian decision-making principle of the beliefs of persons in historically oppressed classes or groups, like indigenous people, get special consideration, versus his one of maybe this one, the first priority for what to believe should be that it causes no harm. Humanitarian decision-making principle. So it maybe be a battle between these two things.
I think that's dead right. Yeah.
You're talking about picking up the rock, throwing it on the ground. Indigenous people see that rock as a soul. It has a soul, right? And so they also would not pick up a rock and throw it on the ground.
I'm not saying that I would do that, but I'm just saying that I would feel less guilty because I recognize that action causes less harm. And the feeling of guilt that you have comes from the concept that there's a notion of harm being inflicted.
So
one thing I just want to point out, because it comes up in SE occasionally if we're not careful, the way he said sure then was incredibly dismissive, and it's so dangerous. Those little one-word acknowledgements, even if we don't intend it, can come across as just being condescending, patronizing, insulting, dismissive, everything. Just one word, you say it wrong, and it can really, really genuinely create a huge barrier in the conversation. So just so careful of your tone. I don't know if he did that on purpose, but yeah, definitely. There you go.
The little minimum occurrences, they need to be authentic. You should just say them.
100%.
Yeah.
Less harm. And the feeling of guilt that you have comes from the concept that there's a notion of harm being inflicted.
So what I would encourage you to do is to look into cosmocentric worldview and to look into how these indigenous people have lived their lives thousands of years before we have come to them, and recognize how they were able to hunt, but in a way that's a community. They bring the community together in a way that honors the animal, in a way that even with the cow, the domestic cow, they do it in a way that honors the animal. Even if they're being killed or not, the animal is giving up its life for us. We are thankful for that animal for giving us its nutrients.
Indigenous people that have to hunt to survive, I have no bones with. I'm accepting that people have to do that to live. So like I've said, and just want to say right again at the end, the situation I'm describing is not the situation I'm here to oppose.
No.
I'm asking people at this university in Dallas why they are vegan, because they're not an indigenous person in Alaska who has to hunt to survive. They're a person who is paying for an animal to be unnecessarily killed.
It's not about, what I was describing then can be here at UTD Dallas. That's what I personally try to do. I see everything that has a soul. I try to treat every single thing with respect.
But you're appropriating indigenous culture to
I'm not
justify
appropriating
arbitrarily
indigenous culture.
harming.
I'm appreciating indigenous
interesting.
culture.
But going into a supermarket and buying a piece of steak is nothing, has nothing to do with that, because they're going through a whole process that's predicated on their survival, whereas us, we're not doing that. So going into a supermarket and buying a steak is nothing like what they're doing.
So why?
It's gonna sting.
Ed, if you're watching this, you know, our objective is not to make you look bad. This is, I think, you just could induce so much more thought, so much more reconsideration of people's position if you were using SE basically. And well, and also, by the way, yeah, I mean, we can talk about this maybe later on. Is it still SE if you have the objective of changing people's minds about a particular thing? And yeah, William has an opinion on this.
Will definitely has an opinion on this.
Yeah.
But I still want to call out that I think the lady in this conversation would do better adopt. I think she would be the one that would benefit most from adopting street epistemology, right? I think she would be the one that would probably actually, firstly, she would be able to I think feel less threatened in the conversation, right? Because she's now essentially, to a certain extent, she'd be able to step out, explore the position with the person whose position she wants to encourage him to think differently. I mean, that's why she sat down. She wants him to examine his reasons and actually reflect on them in order to potentially change his view. Like if that's what she wants to do, she would have been more effective using street epistemology in encouraging him to do that potentially.
Yeah, good point.
Yep. Finish it up here.
The only thing is an animal has died, but in that situation it's justified, but in this situation it isn't.
I gotta get plus.
Okay. All right, thanks so much, Q. Have a great day.
If there wasn't a rapport at the beginning, there so as hell wasn't any rapport at the end. Oh my god.
Perfect ending.
It's really important to try to end things on good terms so that the other person can go think about the talk,
right?
And the everything that you guys just talked about. Like, it's very possible that she just was like putting it out of her mind, or, oh, that guy was a jerk, or, you know, I'm not going to consider what that person had to say, and that's not going to be very effective. Though, if Earthling Ed's goal is to get a lot of clicks on YouTube, so that way other people will change their mind, then that makes sense for debate. Street epistemology, though, I think is going to be so much more interesting if he were to adopt a more curious mindset and to generate questions that will get to people's real reason and then apply outsider tests to those things. I think you will get just as many views, because by the end of the talk, the other person will cordially walk away feeling like that was a fruitful discussion. Like, I enjoyed talking to that person. And ultimately that's how you win hearts and minds, I think, is you keep common ground.
I applaud your optimism, but I'm concerned that playing it for the YouTube video and playing it for the likes is a very different game from actually having an effective conversation. Sure. And I think if that is the goal, I suspect that he probably did quite well here, and it wasn't really ever about what she thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The one thing that I think enjoy the most about SE conversations is when I get the feeling that people are just fascinated by the new thoughts that they get from this conversation, and they get curious, they get excited, and they just love it. They love thinking about it, and suddenly it's fun to potentially change your mind, not necessarily, but it's fun to think about it, fun to think about new thoughts, new arguments, new reasons, etc. And that's what I think is why SE is just so awesome and also so fun to watch, because you see people walking away and then coming back and saying, hey, I thought about this all week. This was awesome. I want to continue this. continue.
That's the real. We talk about aporia as a really nice moment, but I think the moment where you get someone talking to you again about it, saying, "You know what? I have really been thinking about that." That is just amazing. That's such a good.
The pebble
good
in the
moment.
shoe.
Yeah,
Put
exactly
a pebble in
that.
their shoe, and it has to be received positively. Staying positive is so important, because otherwise, how will I won't want to think about something that was unpleasant. If it wasn't pleasant and it wasn't a good conversation, I didn't enjoy myself, I really, thought that guy was a jerk or something, I'm gonna put it out of my mind rather than put it in my mind to think about. And the pebble in the shoe, in street epistemology, in my experience, it's most effective in between conversations, between the first and the second one, because the other person says, well, I had a lot to think about, you gave me a lot to think about, I ruminated about that for the last week or two. And I think that's where it's most powerful.
I've talked to people about that picture of the pebble in the shoe. I've talked to people who understand that to mean that you want to bother them. You want to
I
a little bit, and I feel like, and you want to get them to change their minds, and that's why I'm a little bit. I don't know if I like this image of the pebble in the shoe, because it can get across like that.
Yeah, maybe
it doesn't sound like it's a nice thing.
Maybe we need to spend more time talking about the merits of what it is we're actually reflecting on, right? And the merits of changing our positions. Like, it's okay to say, oh, maybe I didn't have good reasons on that. And it very rarely is a reflection on what's actually true, right? It's really about confidence and reasons. And like I said earlier, my view, I'm still skewed towards veganism, but my confidence in my reasons has dropped because it's been revealed to me when people do essay on me that I haven't really looked into it that much, right? So I haven't really researched it. So I shouldn't have a high confidence on my position of veganism. It's got nothing to do with the truth of the position. It's just that I haven't taken the time to look into it. So I should temper my confidence a little bit. And if we maybe clarify that a little bit and encourage the fact that encourage the view that we should be okay with being wrong. Like, where does this sense of shame or guilt come from? Like, I need to be right all the time. I mean, the world's got enough shame or guilt in the place. Why do we need to feel shame or guilt or embarrassment about acknowledging that we didn't have good reasons for something? Who encourages this idea?
And worse still, that somehow conceding a point in a conversation is the same as completely being destroyed or being humiliated in some way. At no point in that conversation did either party concede a point, or say, hey, that's interesting, I hadn't thought of that way. There was just none of this, because of course in the sort of framing of today's discussions, and I use the term discussion loosely here, that's just you're done then. The moment you've said, hey, that's interesting, I hadn't thought of that, well, no, that now you're the lesser mortal, go away. This is silly thinking. And I think, I don't know is a great answer to almost every question. And being able to say, hey, I hadn't thought about that, I think, to me, is a great indicator that I'm talking to somebody who I can build respect for, because that's just a powerful thing.
Yeah. I want to encourage people admiring people taking the position of I don't know. We should be encouraging that. Right? That should be an admirable trait. Should be an admirable trait. Yeah.
I fully agree. I have a video about that, because I actually think many people's worldviews are built on different attitudes towards the concept of things that we don't know. And I find that I don't know is just apparently a position that people will do tremendously strange things to avoid having to say.
All right. Well, this was a fun experiment. If anyone else has any ideas about potential future videos of debates that are, might be better suited as SE conversations, maybe we'd like to review some of those. So let us know for sure. All right, any last words?
My lips didn't move. Did you see my lips move the whole time?
That was great work. Great work, Will. Great work.
Oh yeah.
All right, good talk, everyone.
Yeah, it was good to
everybody.
Do one on morality. Usually it's just factual truths, and one on morality was quite interesting. Oh, and Earthling Ed, if you want to learn more about SE, reach out to one of us or me, because I'd love to chat. I think that'd be a very fun conversation.
Yeah.
Right. All right. We'll be back probably next week. See ya.
See ya.
Bye-bye.